It can be difficult to quantify the value of ray tracing. On the one hand, realistic lighting paints a scene with an entirely different brush, colouring our gaming experiences with brooding realism and nuanced detail only paralleled in the real world. But on the other hand, there's a $1,200 graphics card giving your bank account the eye. And that's potentially why attaching a price tag to every shadow or reflection in-game is so darn tough. They just aren't all that obvious, and they're often underwhelming. How valuable is seeing a building in Battlefield 5 shattering into pieces in the reflection of the canals of Rotterdam? Realistically, one giant leap for rendering tech can become only a slight change in a player's overall experience, with a litany of stopgap solutions, workarounds, and clever environments doing a hearty job of mimicking the real thing with near enough imperceptible accuracy. For example, with only one light in a scene, you're unlikely to notice much difference. So when another light source enters the scene and shadows become softer and dynamic, the ray tracing comes out to play and traditional shadow mapping falls short. But game devs are pretty darn good at pulling one over players and tricking you into thinking you're seeing dynamic shadows when actually you're just seeing some clever shadow mapping. The same applies for reflections to some extent and pre-baked lighting. Perhaps that's also why ray tracing has received its fair share of animosity, not because it isn't the holy grail of rendering, but because it's intrinsically expensive, both in money and GPU resources. The difference between the holy grail and good enough can be measured in hundreds of dollars and tens of frames, and we're all still waiting for that killer ray trace game to swoop in and convince us all that money was worth it. You'd not be in the minority if you thought Cyberpunk 2077 would be the game to convince ray tracing non-believers they're missing out. From a studio with a prestigious history of gorgeous games, groundbreaking expanses, and an RTX demo that looks absolutely stunning even in its early stages, the game certainly has looks that can kill. But my guess for that killer game is quite the opposite. It's Minecraft RTX. I know it doesn't sound like it should be, but it is. I've now witnessed both titles with my own eyes, and one had me scaring the screen for ray traced effects, and the other was there, clear as day, in full resplendent majesty. Minecraft is a game so unusual in art style, so peculiar and fantastic, that the full suite of ray tracing effects has a profound effect on the cuboid world you inhabit. Where ray tracing was once resigned to a tiny crack here and the odd puddle there, humble Minecraft offers up a radiant scene reimagined courtesy of ray tracing. From the late afternoon sunlight painted on the valley and obscured by the branches on the trees littering the ridge, to the flicker of the lantern dancing across a glacial wall, Minecraft RTX is dazzling. Without totally revamping the textures, a task Mojang has been hesitant to do in the past, or dramatically updating the engine, Minecraft has been transformed into something deserving of a remaster. Vines hang from the openings of tunnel systems, obscuring the largest light source within the cave and obscuring the scene with tangled and dynamic shadows that shift as the sunshine wanes or as another light source enters the frame. Dig even deeper and objects and shadows will dance and shift with the light emitted from burning hot lava at your feet. And that in turn makes the heat emanating from this smouldering rock feel very palpable to the user, odd for a game so often associated with simplistic building blocks. Outside, water comes visibly flowing down into the ravine, and the blocks surrounding it are refracted and reflected as the current shimmers in the light. Fog meanders over land, tempering the light over the world into a hazy, warming glow made possible by volumetric lighting and driven by real-world physics. The new and improved water flowing through the world is perhaps a little too translucent, relying almost entirely on that refraction for it to be visible whatsoever, but we're told Mojang is aware and is working on a fix. It's not until we reach World 2 that things really start to get wild. World 2 is a pre-built house stuffed with objects ripe for ray tracing. It's the Minecraft representation of what, I can only assume, Jensen Huang's house is like. Perhaps just a little smaller than the big man's actual abode, but basically the same thing. Throughout Jensen's villa there are various stations pre-prepared to show off RTX. Most of all is in his surprisingly large basement, which I really wonder what he gets up to in there. But we'll stay upstairs for now, just to be on the safe side. So on one side of the building is a large bay window. On the table in front of it are 3 glass blocks, one red, one blue, and one green. Each one is refracting the scene around it accurately, a ray bouncing off the object to other surrounding objects, and from there collecting information on light sources and reflective surfaces, and eventually coming back to me, the player. What makes Minecraft RTX a little different is its use of path tracing, a form of ray tracing we're yet to see outside of Quake 2 RTX. Ray tracing poses a problem when attempting to replicate light bouncing off of many objects. Reflective surfaces and light sources all add to that computational might. One ray can become 10, 100, 1,000, and so on and so forth, till your GPU is just a puddle of wet sand. After a while, you hit a point of diminishing returns anyways, the point when the computational load is too great and the benefit too little. That's instead where path tracing comes in. Path tracing is a unified algorithm to simulate light in all forms, a single technique to rule them all. And no, I will not stop with the Lord of the Rings references, quit asking. This unified solution brings lighting, shadows, reflections, and refraction all under one single umbrella. Instead of multiplying rays dispersing on every bounce, it utilizes a random sampling algorithm. While potentially noisy, path tracing works on the basis that every pixel receives a different piece of the puzzle required to generate accurate lighting for a scene. Minecraft's simplistic cuboid world isn't all that susceptible to its shortfalls. With just one key press, I was returned to the gaudy, by comparison, world that I once spent hundreds of hours in, a sudden reminder of the flat, rasterized world I'd left behind. The Minecraft that over 100 million players enjoy every month to this day. But once you turn on RTX in-game, it's not easy to return. Minecraft is a fitting subject for ray tracing, perhaps more so than the light touch we've seen in Cyberpunk 2077 so far. A game that, by traditional standards and using the latest lighting trickery and clever design, is already as beautiful as they come. In as much as any game needs ray tracing, Cyberpunk 2077 hasn't shown much need for it in order to stand out and look incredible, at least from what we've seen so far. But much in the same way that my personal favourite ray trace title, Control, looks gorgeous with ray tracing on, but also looks pretty darn lovely with ray tracing turned off too. Strange as it is, it's the unrealistic game worlds that benefit the most from realistic real-world mimicking ray tracing, and it's the growing pool of indie developers harnessing ray tracing plugins for Unreal and Unity, which Nvidia assures me is happening right now, that excites me for the future of ray tracing the most. Because it's in the weird and wonderful titles that shirk ray tracing's hyper-realism and instead use this new and dynamic tool to spur on artistic expression that it will shine brightest. So while there's a place for ray tracing in the most graphically challenging titles to add never-before-seen depth and immersion, if you remain unconvinced that the holy grail of rendering is little more than a gimmick or a newfangled tactic to get you to part with your money, Minecraft RTX might just change your mind. So if you're looking forward to Minecraft RTX's release next year or want to talk about today's vid, join me in the comments down below and maybe think about giving us a like, subscribe and all that. Also check out PCGamesN.com for more from me and the rest of the team. Until next time.